Imagine you're stepping into like a Michelin-starred restaurant. You sit down, the waiter hands you a menu, but, and here's the catch, it's completely blank.
Oh, that sounds incredibly stressful.
Right. And the unspoken rule is if you order a dish that clashes with the current season, or, if your appetizer doesn't perfectly align with the chef's subtle mood, you don't just have a bad meal, you practically insult the entire establishment.
Wow. Yeah, that is quite the stakes.
That kind of intense, invisible pressure is actually exactly what it feels like for a beginner stepping into the world of traditional kimono etiquette. Specifically, this complex system known as TPO.
Which stands for time, place, and occasion, right?
Exactly. So, welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is for you, the listener, to walk away feeling like a total kimono insider. We're going to demystify these strict rules, figure out the ultimate beginner's hack for building a kimono wardrobe, and uncover a massive historical plot twist about where these so-called ancient rules actually came from.
I am so excited for this. It is a beautiful world, the kimono world, but it really does operate on a highly calibrated social calculus.
Calculus is the perfect word for it. It usually feels so overwhelming to learn.
It does, and I think people generally prefer rules to be, static and straightforward.
Yeah.
But kimono etiquette demands constant recalibration. The correct choice shifts depending on the month, the venue, and even the nuanced social hierarchy of the room you're standing in.
Okay, so before we can even begin to figure out what garments to put on our bodies, I feel like we need to look at the people pulling the strings behind the scenes.
The kimono professionals.
Yeah, the retailer, the gofukuya. When learning about this culture, there is this huge tendency to view the retailer as a walking encyclopedia of textiles.
So absolutely. That is easily the most common misconception. Buyers just assume a retailer's value lies in their ability to, pull out a magnifying glass, inspect a thread count, and declare the authenticity of a rare resist-dyeing technique.
Right, like there's some kind of fabric detective.
Exactly. But the artisans who actually weave the silk and mix the dyes, they will always possess a deeper technical mastery than the person working in the shop.
Makes sense.
The retailer is not a fabric encyclopedia. They are fundamentally a social strategist.
Social strategist. It reminds me of the sommelier at that Michelin-starred restaurant we talked about.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Yeah, because when the sommelier arrives at your table, you don't need a lecture on the nitrogen levels of the soil in a French vineyard, or the exact rainfall of a specific vintage.
Right. Nobody wants that while they're trying to eat.
Exactly. You just need them to understand the flavor profile of the dinner you just ordered and tear a wine that elevates the entire experience.
That is spot on. The kimono professional basically functions as a sommelier of silk.
A sommelier of silk. I love that.
You walk into a shop and say, hey, I am attending a wedding in October, and my relationship to the host is, say, a former colleague. The retailer's job is to synthesize all those social variables and curate a garment that pairs perfectly with the dynamics of that specific room.
So their mastery is in navigating human relationships, not just identifying thread patterns.
Precisely. And yeah, that relationship-based expertise also extends to how they avoid counterfeit garments, too.
The pachimon. Which is fascinating, because my initial assumption was that an expert spots a fake through, decades of training their naked eye to catch microscopic flaws.
Yeah, the superhuman vision myth. But honestly, if a counterfeit operation is sophisticated enough, passing off a fake hand-woven pattern to a human eye isn't impossible.
Really?
Yeah. Retailers don't rely on superhuman vision. They rely on a closed, trusted ecosystem. They source exclusively from established lineages, trusted makers, and verified wholesalers. The security of the garment is guaranteed by the integrity of the supply chain.
Okay, so trust the maker, not just your eyes. That makes total sense. But let's back up to the garments themselves for a second. Because isn't the foundational split in kimono categorization just a simple division between casual wear and formal wear?
Well, yes and no. That divide definitely exists, but looking at the mechanics of how these garments are actually made reveals why it exists. Casual kimonos are generally categorized as hard materials, while formal ones are soft.
Hard and soft. What does that actually mean in this context?
So the terms hard and soft refer directly to the production method. Casual garments are woven. The artisan dyes individual silk or cotton threads first, and then weaves them together on a loom.
Okay, so dyed thread, then woven.
Right. And because you are restricted by the horizontal and vertical grid of the loom, the designs are inherently limited to repeating geometric patterns.
Like plaids or stripes or simple checks?
Exactly. Furthermore, the dyed threads make the fabric slightly stiffer, hence the term hard.
Which totally explains why they're relegated to everyday wear. It's a structural limitation. You literally can't weave a sprawling, non-repeating landscape onto a traditional handloom.
You really can't. So to achieve formal status, you move to the soft materials. Here, the artisan weaves entirely raw white silk threads into a blank canvas first.
Ah, so it starts blank.
Yes. And then that canvas is draped and painted using incredibly complex dyeing techniques. This allows for sweeping, continuous artistry. A pattern can flow seamlessly from the shoulder across the seams all the way down to the hem without breaking.
Wow.
Yeah, that non-repeating, painterly quality is what elevates the garment into the formal tier.
And because those dyed, soft materials are so heavily scrutinized and, ranked, the consequences of miscalculating that protocol must peak at major life events.
Oh, without a doubt.
Which explains why retailers are so hyper-focused on the ultimate diplomatic protocol: wedding.
Weddings are the ultimate stress test for TPO. You are navigating a very precarious tightrope governed by a specific philosophy, basically. You must not stand out too much, yet you absolutely cannot underdress.
Because underdressing is essentially a visual declaration that the host's event wasn't important enough to warrant your effort.
Exactly. It is viewed as a direct insult to the families involved.
Yeah.
However, and this is a fascinating exception, there is an inversion of the don't stand out rule when it comes to young, unmarried women.
Oh, right.
For them, the appropriate formal attire is the furasode, which is a kimono characterized by its dramatic, floor-length sleeves.
And the expectation there is absolutely to be incredibly flashy, right? Which is wild because in Western wedding culture, the golden rule is to never ever upstage the bride. But unmarried women in a furasode are encouraged to be highly decorative.
They are, because they serve a specific atmospheric function. A young woman in a vibrant, gorgeous furasode brings a tangible, celebratory energy to the venue. She is physically contributing to the joy and the visual splendor of the event.
Oh, I see.
It is literally considered an act of service to the bride and groom to dress as beautifully as possible. Provided, of course, they avoid wearing white, which remains strictly reserved for the bride.
Okay, so as women age or marry, that atmospheric function obviously shifts. The protocol dictates moving toward the kuroda-misode, right?
Yes, the formal black kimono with artwork restricted only to the hem.
Or a humangi, which is like a visiting dress that features those beautiful, continuous dyed patterns across the shoulders and hem.
Right. And that shift represents a move from bringing youthful vibrance to projecting a more grounded dignity and respect.
Okay, but I have a question here. Because if underdressing is such a severe insult, my instinct is just to overcorrect. Like, if I'm attending a close friend's wedding, I'd want to buy the absolute highest-end, most elaborate humangi I can afford.
Naturally.
And to guarantee I'm demonstrating maximum respect, I'd slap a formal family crest, a man, right on the back of the neck. I mean, why wouldn't that be the safest strategy to just show ultimate respect?
I see your logic, but technically, while you are correct that adding a crest elevates the strict formality rank of a garment, applying that logic to a humangi triggers a very specific cultural faux pas.
Oh, really?
Yes. You cross the line into being gyugyushi.
Gyugyushi. Meaning like exaggerated or pompous.
Exactly. You are trying so hard to prove how formal you are that you end up drawing attention away from the bride and groom and onto your own effort. A humangi is already a highly decorated, visually striking garment.
Right, it's already a statement piece.
So adding a formal crest to it pushes the ensemble into an absurdly heavy theatrical territory for a standard guest. You disrupt the visual harmony of the room by overperforming your respect.
Ah, okay. It's the equivalent of a guest wearing a full tuxedo with a top hat to a semi-formal cocktail reception. You think you're being polite, but you were just making everyone else uncomfortable.
That is a perfect analogy. And beyond the social faux pas, the kimono retailer advises against it for a purely economic reason, too. By permanently attaching a formal crest to a highly decorated dress, you completely ruin its versatility.
Oh, because you can't dress it down.
Right. It becomes a one-trick pony. You can never wear that beautiful garment to a nice dinner party or an art gallery opening or the theater because it will forever carry that heavy, pompous energy.
So we spend all this time learning the delicate balance of this social calculus, threading the needle to avoid being gyugyushi.
Very carefully.
Right, very carefully. And then we look at the protocols for the tea ceremony, which basically takes all of that nuance and throws it directly in the trash.
Yes. The tea ceremony, or more broadly, kikogoto, which means traditional practices and lessons, operates under a completely different paradigm.
So the rules just change.
Completely. In that environment, The advice of your trusted silk sommelier is entirely irrelevant. The only rule that matters is the word of the teacher, the sensei.
So, if the sensei decrees that a specific minor gathering requires a kimono with 3 formal crests, you wear 3 crests. Even if your retailer tells you it is absurdly pompous for the occasion.
The retailer's perspective on societal harmony does not supersede the internal hierarchy of the practice.
It's so much like a military dress code.
It really is.
If you're in the military, you don't evaluate your dress uniform and decide to leave a specific medal off because you feel it looks a bit gyugyushi for the afternoon.
No, you definitely do not.
It is no longer about your personal style or navigating general societal etiquette. You wear exactly what the commanding officer mandates because it's a display of your submission to that specific unit.
That framing highlights exactly how context-dependent kimono culture is. Wedding etiquette is an exercise in social grace. You are navigating external relationships.
Yeah.
But tea ceremony etiquette is an exercise in institutional obedience. You are visually declaring your allegiance to a specific master and the historical lineage of their school. It is a completely different mechanism of respect.
Okay, so navigating the diplomatic protocol of weddings on one hand, and then the dictatorships of traditional lineages on the other. I mean, this makes building a beginner wardrobe sound terrifying.
It can be very daunting.
What is the practical solution for someone who just wants to participate without stepping on a social landmine?
Well, fortunately, there's a master key that unlocks almost every door in the TPO system. It is called the iromuji.
The iromuji, which is a solid color kimono, right? High-quality silk, beautifully dyed, but completely devoid of any painted patterns or sweeping landscapes.
Yes, it essentially acts as a blank slate, but the strategy really lies in how you customize it. The protocol suggests adding a single sewn crest and nuamon on the back of the neck.
Okay, a crest.
But the vital detail here is that this crest must be sewn using thread that is the exact same color as the kimono fabric itself.
Oh, the mechanics of that are brilliant. Because traditionally, a dyed crest leaves a stark white circle in the fabric that is highly visible from across the room.
Exactly.
But a sewn monochromatic crest operates entirely under the radar.
It is stealth formality. If you receive an invitation that formally requires a crested garment, the iromuji technically fulfills the requirement. You check the bureaucratic box.
Right. You played by the rules.
But because the crest blends perfectly into the fabric, it doesn't broadcast as formality.
Yeah.
It completely dodges the trap of being yugyushi.
It functions almost identically to a high-quality dark suit.
A perfectly tailored charcoal or navy suit is honestly the best equivalent in Western fashion.
Yeah, because if you take a dark suit and pair it with a silver silk tie and a pocket square, you're ready for a wedding. But if you take that exact same suit the following weekend and swap the formal accessories for like an open collar or a knit tie, you can comfortably sit in a nice restaurant without looking out of place.
And in the kimono ecosystem, the wide structural sash worn around the waist functions as your tie.
Okay.
You take your solid iromuji with its stealth crest. For a formal wedding, you pair it with a luxurious, tightly woven metallic obi. Then the following week, you swap that out for a slightly more understated, sophisticated obi, and you can attend a kabuki performance or a casual tea gathering feeling perfectly appropriate.
So versatile. And another incredibly versatile alternative we found in the sources is the Edo koman. Mechanically, this is a dyed kimono, but the patterns applied are microscopic. Like from a few feet away, it just appears to be a solid color, but up close, the fabric reveals astonishing, intricate detail.
The Edo koman is particularly favored by older wearers for its understated elegance. And remarkably, if you ensure that the microscopic pattern is neutral, meaning it isn't tied to a specific joyful seasonal motif like, say, cherry blossoms, that garment can even be adapted for condolences and funerals. It is the absolute height of adaptability.
Wow, okay. Yet, despite all these structural rules about versatility, I thought it was so interesting that the most vital piece of advice for purchasing that first kimono has literally nothing to do with tradition. It is entirely about personal psychology.
Yeah.
You must prioritize a color you genuinely adore.
Yes. Over what seasonal color charts dictate, and honestly, even over what a stylist might claim suits your natural complexion.
Because if a beginner takes a financial risk on a color they don't love simply to appease some traditional rule, the garment will never leave the closet.
It becomes a source of anxiety rather than a source of joy. And the baseline function of clothing is to be worn.
Exactly.
If a kimono sits in a drawer for a decade because the wearer feels insecure in it, it has failed. Choosing a color that brings you personal confidence guarantees you will actually step out the door.
I love that. Okay, so we have spent a lot of time treating these TPO categories, like the elaborate furusode, the continuous patterns of the homungi, the strict protocols of the kurotomasode, as if they are immutable laws passed down directly from the samurai era.
Yes, and this is where the historical reality totally fractures that illusion. This hyper-granular system of categorization, it's largely a post-World War II invention.
Which is just a massive paradigm shift. I mean, before the post-war economic boom, the average citizen was not curating perfectly categorized closets of dyed silk.
No, the production methods of the time made it literally impossible. Hand-weaving silk and utilizing natural plant-based dyes was an incredibly slow, labor-intensive process.
Right.
The sheer volume of hours required to produce a single garment meant that ordinary people had a very limited wardrobe. You had everyday wear and perhaps one nicer garment for special occasions. The nuanced distinction between a mid-tier visiting dress and a high-tier formal dress simply didn't exist for the masses.
It was the advancement of post-war loom technology and a rapidly expanding economy that altered the landscape. Suddenly, the industry had the capability to produce way more garments, which meant they needed a strategy to sell more garments.
Exactly. The historical analysis reveals that retailers heavily promoted these distinct TPO rules as a hoben.
A hoben, a convenient excuse, basically.
Yes, a convenient expedient. It was a structural framework designed to segment the market.
The logic is brutally effective. I mean, if society adopts an unwritten rule that you cannot wear your dinner party kimono to a wedding, and you cannot wear your wedding kimono to a tea ceremony, the industry has successfully convinced you to purchase 3 garments instead of 1.
It is undeniably rooted in the commercial realities of the 1950s and 60s economic boom. It was a brilliant merchandising strategy that calcified into cultural tradition.
My initial reaction to uncovering that was pure cynicism. I won't lie. It feels like we're dissecting a marketing campaign that successfully convinced millions of people to endure social anxiety just to move product.
Viewing it exclusively through that cynical lens is tempting for sure, but it misses the deeper philosophy that the culture eventually built around those rules.
Oh.
Yeah, acknowledging the commercial origins of TPO shouldn't induce cynicism. It should offer liberation.
Liberation from the anxiety of the blank menu we talked about at the start.
Precisely. Once you realize that these are not sacred divine edicts, you could stop obsessing over the fear of making a microscopic technical error. The ultimate goal of participating in kimono culture isn't strict compliance to a mid-century retail board's checklist.
The ultimate goal is empathy.
It is the visual communication of consideration. When you evaluate the time, place, and occasion, what you are really doing is sending a message to your host and your fellow guests. You are saying, I considered you, I recognize the importance of this shared moment, and I put time and effort into dressing specifically for our interaction.
It's an act of respect manifested through fabric.
Exactly.
So instead of trying to be a walking encyclopedia of textiles, we rely on the social strategy of the silk sommelier. We learn to navigate the diplomatic protocol of weddings, we submit to the institutional obedience of the tea ceremony, and we utilize the stealth formality of the dark suit iromuji.
Beautifully summarized.
And we do it all with the understanding that these modern rules are just a framework for demonstrating human empathy.
You know, that historical context also raises an incredible prospect for the future.
What do you mean?
Well, if we accept that these rules adapted to fit a rapidly changing post-war economy, we have to ask how kimono etiquette will radically evolve in the next 50 years.
Oh, that is a great point. The environment is already shifting.
Exactly. Will the undeniable realities of climate change permanently alter the strict traditional calendar of when you can wear certain unlined fabrics?
Oh, because it's just getting too hot.
Right. Or, as remote work and virtual gatherings become permanent fixtures in our society, will we see the emergence of an entirely new set of TPO rules, like a protocol dictated entirely by how a silk garment is perceived through the lens of a webcam on a digital screen?
A virtual TPO. Mind-blowing. It perfectly proves that tradition isn't static. It breathes and adapts alongside the people who wear it. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you are faced with an intimidating set of unspoken rules, approach them with curiosity, a bit of flexibility, and remember, underneath all the protocol, it always comes back to the people in the room.